Welcome to the President and CEO Focus on the Middle Market podcast series, where President and CEO founder Paul Stukel discusses middle market issues with business leaders from across the nation. Today, in part 2 of a 2-part series, Paul speaks with Chris Curran, Chief Technologist for global professional services firm PwC, about the firm's recent Digital IQ survey focusing on the priorities of companies with respect to digital investments.
Anyway, so back to the report.
Yep.
One of the things that struck me was that, I guess this isn't surprising, but maybe it's the magnitude of the concentration on objectives, basically driving business returns, the sort of basic business returns, revenue, customer experience, and profit. I mean,
there's two things in there that are surprising, I think. One is the 45% said they were focused on growing revenue, which is about revenue for existing business models. 12% focused on increasing profits, which reminds me of some old days in the telecom industry where the driving revenue and average revenue per user and all those kind of metrics were what the market was looking at, and they weren't really at that point. They were looking for the carriers to build out their infrastructure, and profits were not. It reminds me of those days when profits were not the primary focus. So I think that's the first surprising thing, and I think the second surprising thing is how few reported that their investments were focused on disruption.
Yep.
And, given I wouldn't have expected it to be number one, but it's barely on the radar. With all the hype in the market around it, I would have expected more, some more energy around it as a top 3 at least. I mean, it doesn't even make the top 6 in our survey.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. I was just rather astonished at that because there are so many disruptive technologies right now in terms of everything. I mean, and not just everyone focuses on the marketing side or the customer service side, and that's great. That's true. There's a lot of amazing things happening there. But golly, Internet of Things, the operational things. I mean, R&D. I mean, all and data analytics. I mean, my goodness. Yeah. I mean, there's just and those were so far down the list. That's what I was surprised at. Yeah.
I think there are a couple of interesting things that are going on or could be going on. One is that it's been studied and reported by the likes of Clay Christensen and his collaborators around the innovator's dilemma and the solution and so on, around the capabilities and skills you need to think and to operate in this disruptive world versus sort of the existing business models, and that they are fundamentally different. And as a startup veteran yourself, I mean, you would know that you can't just pick up sort of big enterprise thinking processes, skills, and drop them in a startup and hope to create something brand new and shiny.
That's right. That's true.
And so I think part of it is maybe a recognition that that the leaders think, hey, we're not ready for that yet. Maybe they're building it. Maybe they're getting ready for it. I think that's part one. I think part two is that we're honestly just starting to kind of figure out the big D digital, right? I mean, this is not like in the big D digital, I'm talking about applying some of the user-centered design concepts and some of the emerging technologies into a compelling experience for employees and customers and others. We're just getting that stuff figured out. I mean, there are a lot of examples of it, but in terms of, the Midwestern, industrial products company having that figured out, I mean, I think we're still figuring it out. And so it doesn't surprise me a lot that, 2,000 cross-industry global, participants in this survey said they were really focused on growth, on using the stuff to grow. I mean, it's not a terrible answer. I just think it could also be just part of the maturity of really applying the stuff at the C-suite level rather than in the back office.
So how do you see this shaking out in terms of companies' emphasis, both in terms of the things we were just talking about, but also in terms of if you're talking to a CEO, and trying to advise that CEO, okay, here's how you need to structure your business. Is there a definitive answer that you see arising from this, or not?
Yeah. Here's what I think some of the key messages are for the CEO. First one is that, and I should say in general, or an overarching point that I'd like to make is that our Digital IQ study, every year we're unique in that we look for correlations between behaviors and attributes that companies have or do and performance. And so this year we have 10 attributes that all correlate to company performance that we've together put into a score, a Digital IQ score. But individually, they're all correlated with performance. And one of the ones that we've tracked since the beginning of the study in 2007 is the degree to which the CEO is an active champion of information technology and digital. And that is one of the strongest correlations we have to performance. And performance for us is measured by revenue growth and margin growth. And so the first point is that the CEO, their job in championing technology and digital they've been doing great, and they're killing it, right? I mean, the first 3 years ago, the strong scores for the CEO in championing digital were 57%, went up to 71% last year and 73% this year. And so the point is that, CEOs are doing a great job of carrying the banner for digital. The first message is it's time to now start to move to this single enterprise view of digital, right? And so to get the value for these ideas, we have to have a single unified force of leaders and teams to go do this. We can't have marketing and IT and product innovation and sales and service all fragmented off doing their own thing, because it will not deliver, an optimized value. So now, CEO is doing a great job of, championing the stuff. Now the CEO needs to move to, building the collaborative digital team, as an overlay on the C-suite. I would say that the second thing is being explicit about this, growing the existing business versus disruption. I suspect there's a lot of underlying discussion going on about disruption at every enterprise, but it's an explicit strategy for what is our strategy to protect ourselves from being disrupted, B, disrupting ourselves, being a disruptor.
Right.
And I think with that, when I shared this data with some others, this really, really low 1% of companies saying they were focused on disruption with their digital investments. Some folks said, well, a lot of companies might be sitting back and waiting for the disruptions to happen in the market and then approaching it as an M&A problem. Right? So some of that may not be an existing investment, but maybe they're evaluating the market constantly and looking for, acquisitions and partnerships and things like that, which may be true. Yeah. Some might just be waiting for, their capabilities to expand and to get more sophisticated. Some might be already disrupting, and that's their core business. I doubt that's a big part of our sample. But I think the second thing, the thing I would say to a CEO is have an explicit strategy statement that you communicate and share around disruption? Are we going to actively invest in a separate entity or a separate team that's going to start looking for disruptive ideas for us, or to be prepared for our fiercest competitor? Or are we going to approach this as an M&A partnering problem? Are we going to build an ecosystem of emerging technology kinds of companies around us to help inform us and to be smart about this? Or are we going to sit back and kind of see how the market goes? I mean, it's being explicit about that, I think, is the second bit of advice I would give the CEO.
Go to presidentandceomagazine.com/research for the full report. Be sure to check back for future episodes of the President and CEO Focus on the Middle Market podcast series. Thanks for listening.